Could I have your attention for a moment? We are about to resume. Thank you. Hello again, everyone. Once again, please welcome Kwame Anthony Appiah, who is going to present the 4th Annual PEN Literary Service Award, which honors a truly distinguished North American writer whose critically acclaimed works help us understand the human condition in original and in powerful ways. Anthony?
Margaret Atwood's more than 40 books of fiction, essays, poems, and criticism reveal satirically, tragically, and prophetically important truths about the effects of today's social and cultural forces on individual freedom and identity and on our natural environment. Exploring such critical issues as colonization, feminism, environmental exploitation, and the injustices of the distribution of power, her work has infused realistic storytelling with parables, fairy tales, and myth in original and forceful ways. Her fiction includes The Blind Assassin, which won the Booker Prize in 2000, The Handmaid's Tale, which won the 1985 Governor General's Award in Canada and the first Arthur C. Clarke Award in 1987, as well as Cat's Eye, Alias Grace, and Oryx and Crake, all of which were shortlisted for the Booker Prize. She was recently awarded the Dan David Prize for the Present Time Dimension, sponsored by the Dan David Foundation, to be shared with Amitav Ghosh, who I'm glad to say is with us here tonight. This prize is of $1 million, honors, and I quote, "an outstanding author whose work provides vivid, compelling, and groundbreaking depictions of 20th century life, rousing public discussion, and inspiring fellow writers." Most of this, I'm sure, you mostly know. What you may not know is that both Margaret Atwood and Amitav Ghosh have been subjected to a vicious and vituperative offensive, urging them to reject the award as part of a campaign of cultural isolation against Israel. The literary community in this country does not speak with one voice on the question of Palestine, but I want to be clear about where the PEN American Center stands on one aspect of this vexed issue. We have to stand, as we have stood from the very beginning, against the very idea of a cultural boycott. We have to continue to say, as I said at the start, quoting E.M. Forster, only connect. We have to stick. We have to stick with our founding conviction that writers must reach out across nations. To stand anywhere else would be to betray our history and our mission. Margaret Atwood is undoubtedly among the most talented, visionary, and admired novelists of the last half-century. In addition, she has served as president of our Canadian sister, PEN Canada, from 1984 to 1986, and she is currently a vice president of International PEN. And she remains what she has been for some time, one of PEN's clearest and most stalwart voices for free expression. For serving, in the words of one critic, quote, as a constant voice in the ongoing political and social movements of the day, speaking out against anything that doesn't push society towards tolerance and understanding, the PEN American Center is proud to honor Margaret Atwood tonight with the 2010 PEN Literary Service Award, which is, in case you're curious, a 3-volume first edition of George Eliot's 1866 Felix Holt the Radical. Margaret Atwood.
Thank you very much, dear PEN American Center and the many old friends and survivors of many a battle here assembled. When we started PEN Canada, I think we did it with $20 and a roll of stamps. It got bigger, and so did yours. I thank PEN very much for this award. I am joining a list of very distinguished writers, and I don't deserve to be joining it, but as the theologically pessimistic used to remark, if we all got what we deserved, we'd be boiling in oil. I hope, however, that this recognition is not the equivalent of the gold watch to the retiring manager. Getting a bit crumbly there, Margaret. Surely not, for writers can't retire, nor can they be fired. As we hear constantly from those who think there should be no arts grants, writers don't have real jobs. That's true in a way. They have no employers, or rather their employers are their readers, which imposes on them a truly Kafkaesque burden of responsibility and even guilt, for how can you tell whether you're coming up to the standards of people you don't even know? Publishing a book is like stuffing a note into a bottle and hurling it into the sea. Some bottles drown, some come safe to land where the notes are read and then possibly cherished or else misinterpreted or else understood all too well by those who hate the message. You never know who your readers might be, or else you find out in an unpleasant way. You're arrested, you are condemned, you are tortured, you are shot, you disappear. Those doing the shooting and torturing, whether they are from the left or the right, whether they represent theocracies or secular totalitarian dictatorships or extreme factions, all have one thing in common. They wish to silence the human voice, or all human voices that do not sing their songs. They wish to indulge their sense of power, which is best done by grinding underfoot those who cannot retaliate. Writers, artists in general, are easy prey for the silencers. They don't have armies. They can be cut out from the herd. They've already cut themselves out by daring to speak, and few in their own countries will be foolhardy enough to defend them. Voices can be silenced, but the human voice cannot. Our languages are what make us fully human. No other creature has anything like our rich and complex vocabularies and grammars. Each language is unique. To lose one is to lose a range of feeling and a way of looking at life that, like a living species that becomes extinct, can never be replaced. Human narrative skills are found in every language and are very old. We all have them. We writers merely use them in what we fondly believe are more complex ways. But whether written down or not, stories move, from hand to paper to eye to mouth, from mouth to ear. And stories move us. This is their power. Written stories are frozen voices that come to life when we read them. No other art form involves us in the same way, allows us to be with another human being, to feel joy when he laughs, to share her sorrow, to follow the twists and turns of his plotting and scheming, to realize her insufficiencies and failures and absurdities, to grasp the tools of her resistance from within the mind itself. Such experience, such knowledge from within, makes us feel that we are not alone in our flawed humanity. None of us are so mad as to suppose that all books are really good things. Mein Kampf was a book. So we are constantly enmeshed in a choice of evil struggle. Which is worse, to allow free access or to start censoring? And once the censoring begins, who shall be in control of it and where will it stop? Nor is such blue penciling a habit of ruthless dictators only. Well-meaning people acting in what they feel is the public good have censored or boulderized everything from the Bible to the Wizard of Oz. I suppose we at Penn have an optimistic view of human nature, that given full access to everything on the menu, people on the whole will reject the tyrannical, the sadistic, and the repugnant. Also optimistic is our conviction that if we battle on behalf of the ever-swelling number of novelists, journalists, poets, and playwrights who have been condemned for their writing, at least some of the battles will be won, as many of them have been, though some have not. Each time one of these battles is lost, the muffling silence creeps closer. And it's in silence and in secrecy that the worst horrors breed. Yet sooner or later, we trust, even these hidden stories will be told. The messengers in such cases are seldom welcome, yet they are necessary and must be protected. For if we cannot acknowledge that the shadows exist, the shadows cast by others, as well as the ones we cast ourselves, how can we hope to dispel them? Thank you.
Next, we honor an international publisher and a writer who have put their own lives and their livelihoods in the line to defend their freedom to write. Each year, Penn joins with the Association of American Publishers to confer the Jerry Labor International Freedom to Publish Award. This is part of a year-round partnership between Penn and the AAP's International Freedom to Publish Committee, a partnership that pays tribute to the fact that writers and publishers are inseparable allies in the battle against censorship. And the AAP does in the world of publishing what Penn does in the world of literature. Throughout the year, the Penn and the committee carry out joint projects to expand the freedom to write throughout the world. This year's Jerry Labor International Freedom to Publish Award goes to Bao Pu and Renee Chang, founders and publishers of the New Century Press in Hong Kong. And here is a short video produced by 60 Minutes' own Keith Sharman and Reuben Heyman Cantor that tells a little bit of this remarkable story.
In 1989, the world watched as Tiananmen Square filled with thousands of Chinese students who demanded freedom of speech and the end of a one-party state. An untold number of students paid for the protests with their lives. But while the crackdown was broadcast around the world, what was actually taking place at the highest level of China's government would remain a mystery for 20 years. In 2009, the New Century Press, a small Hong Kong-based publishing house run by Bao Pu and his wife Renee Chang, released Prisoner of the State, the posthumous memoir of Zhao Ziyong, the former General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party. Unlike his hardline comrades, Premier Zhao sympathized with the protesters and opposed the use of force to clear Tiananmen Square. His stand made him the greatest political casualty of the uprising, and he was stripped of his powers and condemned to spend the rest of his life under house arrest. A prisoner in his own home, Zhao began to make secret audio recordings about his life and times. The tapes were smuggled by Zhao's confidants to Hong Kong, where they were stitched together into a groundbreaking memoir of the inner workings of the Chinese state apparatus. Prisoner of the State is just the latest in a series of titles put out by New Century Press that challenges or questions China's official party line. Since its founding, working out of just a small shared office space in Hong Kong, New Century has published 25 books, including Chinese Civilization Revisited, a work of history that, like Prisoner of the State, has been banned on the mainland for exploring ideas about China's past that the government finds threatening. The International Freedom to Publish Committee salutes Bao Pu, Renee Chang, and the New Century Press for their tireless commitment to bringing alternative voices to mainland China.
Bao Pu and Renee Chang are in Hong Kong and express their deep gratitude for this award. So please join me in giving them our congratulations for this outstanding and indispensable work. And now I want to present a short video, again thanks to Keith and Ruben at 60 Minutes, on this year's Penn Barbara Goldsmith Freedom to Write Award recipient. As Anthony mentioned earlier, at any given moment, Penn is monitoring the cases of more than 1,000 writers in prison, on trial, or at least under some threat. A major support for these efforts comes from this dinner tonight. It helps pay for it. And this dinner serves as a platform for spotlighting imprisoned writers, particularly in dire circumstances. And this award has two purposes, really: to honor the imprisoned writers themselves, yet also to increase the pressure on those who violate this essential human right to express themselves.
What's important about Napoleon Lat is the fact that this is someone in a very difficult circumstance, in a society which is very repressive on the level of expression, who feels that impulse that writers feel, which is, I have to do this, I have to speak.
He's intelligent, he's articulate, he captures the feeling and frustration of youth. He can communicate in English, in Burmese. He's very dedicated to freeing his country.
It's this dedication that cost Napoleon Lat his own freedom when he was arrested in early 2008 by the Burmese military. Just 29 years old, he is one of the youngest Penn Barbara Goldsmith Freedom to Write recipients ever, and he is emblematic of a new generation of Burmese activists and citizens who were inspired by music and the arts and empowered by the internet. This vibrant culture made itself known in the summer of 2007, when Burma's Buddhist monks led protests against the country's military regime. While their courageous stand, known as the Saffron Revolution, played out in the streets, very little information escaped the control of the authorities. Internet cafes like the ones owned by Napoleon Lat became some of the only places in the country where news could be exchanged and freely sent to the outside world.
Having the access to the internet and being able to start up some cafes was really crucial to getting the news out. And I believe he probably made it quite clear that his internet cafe was a safe place to come, to use the internet and to have access and send news out.
Napoleon Lat's own website was called Myanmar Blogger, and his entries gave the wider world a sense of the anguish felt by the Burmese people. In one entry addressed to the founder of modern Burma, Nepon Lat wrote of the frustrations of a dream deferred.
Dear General, we have not done our duty yet. The hearts of the people were full of wounds. Dreams were killed for the tomorrows that will never be fulfilled.
In a country where defaming the state can lead to long prison terms, entries like those from 2007 fueled rumors that Lat would soon be arrested. So in the fall of that year, he decided to seek refuge in Singapore. But after only a few months of self-imposed exile, he made the decision to return home.
His friends and family warned him that probably is not a good idea to come back right now. But he got homesick, and he also felt he wanted to help his country somehow. So he came back from Singapore to Burma in mid-January of 2008, and he was arrested very soon afterwards.
Governments that are worried about maintaining control are trying to figure out what to do about bloggers who talk about the things that they say people shouldn't talk about. And one of the things, unfortunately, they do, and they've done it with about a dozen people in Burma, is lock them up.
Initially, Lat was sent to Burma's infamous insane prison. He was only sentenced to a few months in jail for the blogging, but he was also given 20 years for possessing a copy of an outlawed DVD. Though his sentence has been reduced, he still faces another decade behind bars.
And I think this charge of owning, having a banned DVD was just an excuse. He's one of the most, if not the most was the most popular blogger in Burma. So I think that's why they put him in jail, because he was shining a light on everything that was happening.
You know, we have proverbs. The books are friends of people, but I think writers are enemy of the government.
Penn has helped writers in Burma before. In the 1990s, the works of Mathita, a writer, activist, and renowned physician, won her the love of the Burmese people and caused the government to put her in prison. She spent more than 23 hours a day in her cell and came close to dying from tuberculosis.
Everybody thought I might die in prison, and I had 6 months consecutive fever. My body weight was only 80 pounds, and I couldn't walk towards the interview room to meet my parents.
In 1996, Mathita was awarded the Penn Barbara Goldsmith Freedom to Write Award, and 3 years later, she was released from jail. The military says on humanitarian grounds.
As someone who has been recognized by the international community, that's why they couldn't easily ignore my case. So it's really helpful.
And that message we've heard over and over again over the years from writers to whom we've given these awards. And one of the things they say is, you've no idea how sustaining it is to know that other writers in other places are thinking about us as we're sitting in our prison cells. If I had one thing to say to Nepon Lat, it would be, you have a global community of friends. This voice from America is one of the voices of that global community of writers who know about you, who care about you, who are thinking about you. So do not lose faith. We're here for you. We won't forget you.
Nepon Lat remains in the hearts of his family, his supporters, and members of Penn worldwide. In the 24 years that the Penn Barbara Goldsmith Freedom to Write Award has been given, over 30 winners have also won a more important prize, their own freedom. Like those recipients, Nepon Lat has put his desire to express himself above all else. At the height of the 2007 Burmese protests, he composed a poem that compared the monks marching on Rangoon to the country's most famous river, the Irrawaddy.
How much more do we have to sacrifice for peace, for justice, for truth? Let's forget about guns that are not to shoot into the air. One sure thing is, however much they kill, however many people die, the Irrawaddy on the road will forever be flowing in our hearts.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Goldsmith, and as that video amply demonstrates, freedom to write is the heart of Penn. And I want to thank all the media and all of our 145 branches the world over who have turned a spotlight on this case. We handle 1,000 cases a year, but this is a year where we really need to press Burma to allow people their freedom. They have imprisoned so many people this year, and we are trying to turn that spotlight strong on Burma. And every one of you can help. Just go to the PEN website, and it will tell you who to write, how to begin to join our effort to get these people out of jail. I also want to thank all of the people who have made private contributions to Freedom to Write. We depend on those as well as our general funds. So if you have any money left after this gala, send it in and say it's for Freedom to Write. Nafon Lat is a blogger, and he's a blogger in a country that will not allow him free expression. But I'm here to introduce to you Tina Brown, who needs no introduction, who has a wonderful blog, The Daily Beast. I know how good it is because I write for it. And I want her to read a poem that she has gotten from our winner this year. Tina.
Thank you so much, Barbara, and thank you for everything that your award does for PEN year after year. An extraordinary commitment to this cause and this evening. I'm very proud that PEN isn't recognizing a blogger this year. In announcing this year's award, our president, Anthony Appiah, said, Nafon Lat represents a younger generation of Burmese who are longing for freedom and willing to pay the cost of speaking out in its defense. That he is a blogger reflects the global truth that internet censorship is one of the great threats to free expression today. That Nafon Lat is also a poet reminds us that every society speaks with the voice of the imagination, as well as through its non-fiction writers. We honor him, we thank him. We ask all of you who have any influence on the government of Burma to press for his release. Let me add as well our personal thanks to Nafon Lat and our personal pledge that your colleagues at PEN and your colleagues in the international community of bloggers will not rest until you are free. This past weekend, word reached Nafon Lat in prison that he would be receiving the award this evening. Despite severe restrictions on his ability to communicate with the outside world, he managed to get a message out to be read here tonight. It's my honor to read his words. This award is dedicated to all writing hands which are tightly restricted by the unfairness and are strongly eager for the freedom to write all over the world. Thank you all.
Tonight, we have a special person for you, a person we were not sure could make it here, but she has. It's my 1996 Freedom to Write winner, Matita, and here she is.
Thank you. This is the award I owe to PEN for 14 years. Now I can say thank you freely. On behalf of all writers and media personnel in Burma, I would like to say thank you to PEN for recognizing our long-term struggle for the freedom to write and freedom of expression. In Burma, writing professional is not very popular because writers are ever at risk of being arrested and sentenced for several years in prison. But when writers arrested, all the political activists were arrested in prison, we all noticed that only writers in prisons are well recognized and supported by PEN and several other PENs all over the world. So other political prisoners used to say, you writers are lucky, and we wish we should have been writing and could have been recognized as writers. And then here in prison, our sacrifice not being that much ignored. So with the limited freedom, all political prisoners try to read and write. Because of that effort, some other have been arrested, some other have been sentenced again for other several years, but they became writers, even they're still in prison, or after they were released, they became an established writers and bloggers. So PEN, writers from PENs help us to be writers in Burma. So I would like to rephrase my words on behalf of all political prisoners in Burma and all citizens of Burma. I would like to say thank you so much to PEN. Thank you.
The home stretch. Please join me in welcoming the author of The Enchantress of Florence, Step Across the Line, Shame, Fury, Midnight's Children, The Moor's Last Sigh, The Satanic Verses, and 10 other epic-defining works, who also happens to be the chair of PEN's World Voices Festival of International Literature, Salman Rushdie.
Thank you. I'm one of the 4 or 5 people in the room in the happy position of being an ex-president of PEN, which, as we know, means that you have responsibility without power. My particular responsibility, which I'm extremely proud of, is to still be the chair of the PEN World Voices Festival, which we started 6 years ago without any real sense of knowing where it was going. And I think all of us have been heartened and made to feel a great pride by the way in which the city of New York has responded to this festival and has taken it to its heart. And there are many things about it that are wonderful. Writers come from all over the world this year. I think 150 writers from 40-odd countries will be here this week. They've already started last night. They'll be going on from now on. And I hope that all of you will take the opportunity to go and see at least some of them. I mean, we obviously have to thank a lot of people. There's a lot of people in this room, starting with Carol Llewellyn, but everyone else at PEN who worked for this. Many cultural institutes in New York, the French, the German, the Spanish, the Hungarian, many other cultural institutes who have donated their efforts and their finances to bring writers over. We're grateful to them, and we're grateful, of course, to all the people who've coughed up the cash, without which it's not possible. And to do that in these hard times, it's quite something. So the festival is flourishing, and here it is. And the great thing about it is, I think now it's established in the cultural calendar of New York. It's something that people seem to want. It has a wonderfully young audience that comes to it. It's bringing another generation of people towards PEN's mission. As a result of the festival, we get all kinds of volunteers, people who want to come towards us and become involved in the wider mission of PEN, and that's a good thing. It gives us a kind of saliency and visibility, which then strengthens the message of whatever else it is that we're trying to campaign on behalf of. So I think it's a great, good thing. And as I've been often in these years prone to do, I quote the immortal words of Kevin Costner: if you build it, they will come. I also have the extraordinary joy of introducing a hero of mine, and I think of many of ours, Patti Smith. Patti is many things. She's a poet whose energy and vision have found their voice in music. She's a pioneer of the New York punk scene. She's the author of many books, including Wit, Babel, Wool Gathering, her complete lyrics, Auguries of Innocence. She's just published a wonderful memoir about herself and Robert Mapplethorpe. Her artwork has been seen all over the world. There's a wonderful show of her artwork only a month or so ago here. I can greet her as a fellow commandeur of the Ordre des Arts et des Lettres, but unlike me, she's also been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That invitation has not yet come. She's been always very strongly involved in social issues and in a number of human rights organizations. And only last week, she received the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, that's ASCAP's 2010 Founders Award at the 27th Annual Pop Music Awards, and that's an honor which has previously been won by Bob Dylan, Stevie Wonder, Joni Mitchell. The ASCAP president and chairman, Paul Williams, said last week, he called Patti Smith a songwriter, poet, trailblazer, and rock icon whose creative genius and rock and roll spirit will continue to inspire generations to come. I couldn't have said it better myself. Now, don't clap yet, because before she comes up here, we have to move all this crap off the stage. So in a minute, Patti Smith.
By the way, when you check your program for the Literary Festival, you'll see that on Saturday, Patti is in conversation with Jonathan Latham. It is now time for us to walk up those stairs and enjoy champagne and dessert. And it's time for me to say once again, to every person who stood on this stage, to every one of you, and to the PEN staff, who I'm so proud to lead, and to everyone behind the scenes tonight, the simplest but most powerful words in the English language: thank you. That's the good news. The bad news is we can still hear some of you, so pray silence, especially on my behalf, as this is my first gala as executive director, and for many of us, including me, this is what Vice President Joe Biden might call a big deal. You know the rest. Let me start by welcoming you on behalf of our president, Anthony Appiah, and our board of directors and the chairs of our gala. With those chairs of the gala, Annette Tappert, Lawrence J. Kirschbaum, Stephen Plachette Murphy, John Traub, Tina Brown, Christine Kubek-Bernstein, and Tony Goodale, please stand and receive our thanks and recognition for working so hard to make this gala glorious and victorious. Sir Christopher Ricks, who is with us tonight, has written that gratitude is among the human accomplishments literature lives to realize. That tie between literature and gratitude comes to mind because tonight, Penn and the literary community of its members stand before you in gratitude. The success of this gala, and indeed it is a great success, depended upon the contributions of organizations and individuals. We wish to highlight the gala's major sponsors: Random House, Stephen and Ann Plachette Murphy, John and Louisa Traub, and LJK Literary Management. And in our program, you will see a fuller listing of the many who contributed with distinctive generosity. To all of them and to all of you, we thank you for so generously coming to our side. Tonight, Penn also stands before you in purpose. Since our founding in 1921, we have been dedicated to the principle of free expression and have fought repression and censorship on behalf of the precious relationship between writers and their readers. In this 50th year of Penn's Writers in Prison program, we continue to voice our conscience, coming to the side of those who are in jail because their words have offended a government. By the end of this evening, after you have seen shining examples of those whom we honor and those whom we hope to help set free, we trust you will be affirmed in having joined our calling. Penn stands before you tonight in celebration of literature and the ties that bind us to 145 Penn centers around the world in an international fellowship through language and translation and commitment to writers whose imagination and observations give us works of pleasure and distinction. This week, Penn begins its 6th World Voices Festival. As you will see in the brochures available to you as you leave this evening, its events embody the signature purposes of Penn: free expression and the promotion of literature. Thus tonight, Penn stands in gratitude, purpose, and celebration, carrying on as our once president, the great playwright Arthur Miller, would have us do, and so recalling his words: when political people have finished with repression and violence, Penn can indeed be forgotten. Until then, with all its flounderings and failings and mistaken acts, it is still, I think, a fellowship moved by the hope that one day the work it tries and often manages to do will no longer be necessary. I cannot imagine that anyone in this room is unfamiliar with the television show 60 Minutes. It is a blazing star of electronic journalism. Steve Kroft, our MC tonight for a second year, is marking his 21st year with 60 Minutes. This year, he was awarded the Paul White Award from the Radio Television Digital News Association, the highest honor that peer group bestows for a body of work. He has twice won George Foster Peabody Awards. Steve and his colleagues at CBS, who produce the films you will see later, represent a journalistic professionalism of high accomplishment, all in the service of an informed nature. I want to thank you all again, and now, gratefully, welcome to this podium, Steve Kroft.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening and welcome, everyone. and thank you for coming tonight. I'm honored to be here for the second year in a row to serve as your host at this year's Penn Literary Gala. And I'm here, as I have been here for probably the last 10 years, because I love this event and the group of people, a very unique group of people that it brings together under one roof. And I'm here because of the work that Penn does, and because the work that I do and the work that many of you do depends vitally on freedom of expression, which Penn is defending every day here in the United States, 24 hours a day, and around the world. I'm here because I love literature, and because Penn works tirelessly to cultivate new literary voices and to connect writers with readers and publishers, and to promote the open exchange of art and ideas across borders and cultures. There's no better example of that than the 6th annual Penn World Voices Festival, which kicked off yesterday, and which features 158 writers from more than 40 countries that will be appearing at more than 50 events here in New York City for the next 5 days. I'm here, like you, to celebrate Penn and to join with you in applauding one of the great writers and Penn activists of our time, and in honoring a publisher and a remarkable young writer who have made great sacrifices in standing up to censorship. It's now my pleasure to introduce the president of the Penn American Center, Kwame Anthony Appiah. The son of an English novelist and children's book author and a Ghanaian barrister and statesman, he grew up and attended primary school in Ghana. After his father was imprisoned by the Nkrumah government, he continued his education in England, where he earned his doctorate in philosophy at Cambridge. And since then, he has taught and lectured at numerous universities in the Americas, Europe, and Africa, published widely in philosophy, as well as African and African-American literary and cultural studies. The books include Cosmopolitanism, Ethics in a World of Strangers, and with Henry Louis Gates, Africana, the Encyclopedia of the African and African-American Experience. For 6 years, the chair of Penn's Freedom to Write Committee, Kwame is now the Lawrence Rockefeller University Professor of Philosophy and the University Center for Human Values at Princeton. Please welcome Kwame.
Thanks very much, Steve, and thanks for doing this for us. One of the distinctions of this evening is the fact that we have so many distinguished writers from this country and around the world here who are here to support our work, and I'd be very grateful if the literary hosts would just briefly stand for a moment so you can see the amazing company of writers who is gathered here today. The first Penn Center was founded, as was mentioned, in London in 1921, in the unshakable conviction, as one of the founders wrote, that if the writers of the world would learn to stretch out their hands to one another, the nations of the world could learn in time to do the same. That spirit animated the American writers who founded the Penn American Center a year later. Those were dark days in the shadow of the First World War, which had divided nation from nation. But the life of letters, the life of the imagination, aims to connect in the face of the forces that divide. Only connect the prose and the passion, says Margaret in E.M. Forster's Howard's End, and both will be exalted. Live in fragments no longer. Those words may not have been meant for Penn, but we've always lived by them. In our world today, divided as it still is, alas, along so many fissures, that spirit is still as essential as it was nearly 90 years ago. The original PEN, the poets, essayists, and novelists, have been joined over the years by editors, historians, literary critics, philosophers, playwrights, publishers, and others in the literary community to work with the support of many of our readers in the continuing pursuit of that vision of a world brought together by literature. So it's especially fitting that the Gala is now the opening event, the glittering opening event of a glittering literary festival, our Festival of World Voices. The commitment of the literary community to connection and to free expression derives from our vocation. And our distinctive contribution is to bring to bear the words and the ideas, the moral force of writers around the world in pursuit of these vital goals: sustaining free expression everywhere, building connection through translation across nations and cultures, keeping fiction and non-fiction, verse and prose in our country vitally connected with the lives of readers and writers in every other country, as well as in our own. In the course of this evening, you're going to see some highlights of what we do. But I'd like to urge you to go to our website later, when you get home, if you haven't had too tiring an evening, and see the full range of what we do. We'll be focusing on our work for free expression abroad tonight, but there's so much more, including our work for literacy and our recognition through our many prizes of distinction in writing of many, many genres. I want to join Steve in thanking on your behalf the Gala Committee and the staff who've made this evening possible, and the Festival Committee and the same indomitable staff who have created the festival. And in acknowledging those who made the festival possible, I want to give special thanks to Salman Rushdie, whose idea the festival was those few years ago, and who continues to share it with his characteristic mélange of vigor and vision. And I'd like to thank, too, the many publishers and cultural organizations who've responded to his call. Thank you, Salman. Last August, we were pleased to announce the hiring of our new executive director, Steve Eisenberg. He's held many leadership posts, including publisher of New York Newsday, interim president of Adelphi University, and he was once chief of staff to New York City Mayor John Lindsay. But unlike most of the people who have that sort of resume, you will find a forthcoming essay of his in this year's volume of Best American Essays. There aren't many people in leadership positions who can claim that. I want to thank him for working so effectively with the PEN team, with the board, with the staff, with members, and of course with our supporters, as we forged a partnership to lead this wonderful organization. One measure of his success is that in these difficult times for not-for-profit organizations, I'm able to announce that this year the Gala and the festival will bring in more than $1.3 million. This is probably also the right moment to give special thanks to Linda Morgan, our Director of Development. But this room is full of all the people who've made this success possible, so I want to thank you all very much, and I'd like to ask you to give yourselves a round of applause. Now, as you know, the core of PEN's work is its advocacy on behalf of writers and journalists facing persecution. Today, there are nearly 1,000 men and women on our case list, and every year at the Gala, we highlight a few of these remarkable people. What you may not have a sense of is the tenacity with which we pursue these cases and the often deeply personal nature of our support. So we thought I should give you a little update on our main honoree at last year's Gala, Liu Xiaobo, who, as you know, is one of China's most important writers. He's also a PEN member and the former president of the independent Chinese PEN Center, our courageous sister center on the front lines of the struggle to expand freedom of expression in his own country. This time last year, Liu was being held incommunicado in an unknown location, facing accusations of inciting subversion of state power for his writings. And as you'll no doubt remember, he was tried on December the 23rd of last year, and in a characteristic gesture, the Chinese government chose to sentence him on Christmas Day to 11 years in prison on the basis of 224 of the million or so characters that he's written in the last few years. So worried that Liu Xiaobo would be sent to a remote prison to serve out his term, far from his wife and friends, we redoubled our efforts to make the Chinese government publicly, internationally accountable for his treatment. Days after that verdict on a snowy New Year's Eve, we staged a protest reading of his banned works, reading every one of those characters for which he was convicted on the steps of New York Public Library in the snow. The event received international coverage, and I'm glad to say that there was a full feature on CNN in Asia, which was broadcast into China, so now the Chinese people have seen my face. We followed this by nominating Liu Xiaobo for the Nobel Peace Prize, a gesture that prompted a rattled response from a Chinese government official. We had previously pressed President Obama to raise Liu Xiaobo's case in particular when he traveled to China in November, which he did, and we continue to press the US Embassy in Beijing to continue to raise his case on all opportunities, and that is what they are doing. But we also did more of what PEN uniquely does: direct, personal, writer-to-writer assistance and support. Last month, Larry Seams, our terrific Director of Freedom to Write and International Programs, traveled to Hong Kong on our behalf in a gesture of public support for the independent Chinese PEN Center. There are currently 5 members of that center in prison in China. Nevertheless, they continue to struggle for the freedom to write in China, and every year in a public ceremony, they give Freedom to Write awards, as we do, to censored Chinese writers. After attending that ceremony, Larry traveled on to Beijing to meet with Liu Xiaobo's wife. Because Liu Xia, her name is under constant surveillance, the meeting took place in the lobby of a Beijing hotel. And at that meeting, knowing that we would be gathering here today, tonight, Liu Xia read a poem that Liu Xiaobo had written the last time he was in prison. So here from Liu Xiaobo's wife is her literary postcard to PEN. And after the clip, Victoria Riddell, our Vice President, will read Jeffrey Yang's beautiful English translation. Thanks very much, and I'll be back with you later.
又到日子了，他又发布命令，你又该独自上路，没有身体，没有记忆，用被掏空的生命，背着带给他的沉重书籍上路。他很善于投机，从不放过每一次剥夺你的机会。亲爱的我的妻子，在这尘世中，所有卑微之中，你为什么单单挑选了我来忍受？1999年7月23日。
Greed's prisoner for the dispossessed wife. A prisoner presses into the crowd of your life, so cruel and full of greed, won't even let you buy a bouquet of flowers for yourself, a piece of chocolate, a pretty dress. He doesn't give you time, not a single minute does he give you. The smoke in your cupped palm, he breathes in completely. Even the ashes don't belong to you. His body in the prison of the Communist Party, so that the spirit cell you built without a door, without a window, without a thread of a crack, locks you in a solitude to rot. He forces you to endure each night in the carcass of denunciation. He controls your pen, makes you write endless letters, makes you desperate to find hope. Your suffering's been trampled upon, his boredom's one pleasure. That bird of yours is lost in the torturous palm lines of his hand, where each path has betrayed you. This empty-eyed, all-ignorant dictatorship has plundered your corpse. In one night, white hair covers your crown, completing his legend, his myth. The moment he sees himself brimming with righteous deeds, you already possess nothing. But this prisoner has deathly seized the white space of your future. Another sun comes. Once more, he issues an order. Once more, you must walk the road alone, without body, without memory, using this hollowed life to carry his heavy bookload on the road to Him. He is very good at exploiting every chance to dispossess you of your possibilities. Beloved, my wife, in this dust-weary world of so much depravity, why do you choose me alone to endure?
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Victoria. The power of those words and the courage that they take are a reminder of why we're here tonight. And please join me in thanking Lu Zhao for sending that extraordinary postcard. That concludes the first part of our program. Please enjoy your dinner, and I'll see you a bit later.